Chapter 1. For my birthday, one of my sycophants sent me a gift. Victoria Vance, fresh out of college. She was scrubbed clean and dressed up, looking all meek and obedient. But the next moment she was shoving a drunk who'd groped her headfirst into a toilet. An innocent-looking flower with a dark core. Interesting. I let her stay by my side. She went from being my plaything to my assistant, climbing the ladder step by step. 8 years passed. Victoria Vance went from a debt-ridden piece of low-class goods to the capital's youngest self-made female billionaire. I grew to admire her more, even considered a strategic marriage. Then one day, a young man showed up at my door. He provocatively held out his phone. Picture after picture of him and Victoria, intimate and close. The last thing was a video. "Vicky, tell me, who do you really love?" Victoria laughed. "Just some old man I've squeezed dry. He's not even worthy of shining your shoes." I just smiled. I never thought a few scraps from my table could raise such an ungrateful backstabber. That night, a freshly severed finger was placed on Victoria Vance's desk. She stormed my estate at midnight, a knife pressed against my neck. Sincere Hawthorne, I adjusted my silk robe, speaking casually. Has Miss Vance perhaps forgotten her place? Her eyes were bloodshot as she hissed. "You're betting I don't have the guts to kill you?" The little girl who once trembled in a white dress had, after years of luxury, developed quite an aura, but it meant nothing to me. I smiled faintly. "This act of yours is all bark and no bite." Victoria clenched her jaw, but suddenly her pupils dilated, her face draining of color. The large screen behind me lit up, showing a live feed from the basement. Inside a huge dog cage, the young man was frantically trying to escape a snarling wolfhound. Nearby, 8 more ferocious dogs watched, waiting. "Why don't you calm down?" I smiled, my voice soft, just like when I used to mentor her. "Your hand slips, it's all over for me. But your sweetheart will either die a horrible death or wish he were dead." The young man's screams echoed from the screen. "Get away, I'm with CEO Vance, Vicky, come save me." Victoria trembled with rage, the blade of her knife drawing a thin line of blood on my skin. "Sincere Hawthorne, you dare risk your life?" My bodyguards glared, taking a step forward. The air grew taut. I let out a soft laugh and ordered, "Stand down." Before the words had faded, I pulled out a gun and fired it straight at her. The bullet tore through the flesh of her upper arm. Victoria stifled a scream, but the knife in her hand pressed down harder. As if feeling nothing, I asked with a smile, "Like it?" Her face was ashen. "Is that enough? Give him back to me. Ethan isn't like you. He's innocent, kind, and full of light." Outside the estate, Victoria's men had arrived. I only intended to teach her a small lesson tonight, so I quickly gave the order to release him. Victoria immediately clung to the wailing Ethan Miller, comforting him as if he were the most precious thing in the world. My interest instantly waned. Victoria used to be like that with me. When our son Leo was killed by our enemies, she and I held each other tightly, supporting one another. Later, she personally risked everything to avenge our child. She nearly lost an arm and a leg for it. Before her wounds had even healed, she insisted on lighting a memorial lamp for Leo with me at the Grand Temple, and donated to keep it lit forever. The smell of medicine was strong on her as she kowtowed piously, again and again, her gaze harder than stone. Sincere, he was our only child. We were not meant to be a family in this life, but in the next, the 3 of us will be reunited, happy and content. Now watching this pair of lovebirds, I thought to myself, so even a promise sealed in blood can't be trusted. Ethan cried, shooting me hateful, jealous glares. Victoria took his uninjured hand, pushed past me, and walked away without a backward glance. Her parting words floated back to me. "You should be thankful you didn't actually cut off Ethan's finger. But I won't forget you threatening me tonight. Sincere Hawthorne, you just wait." Victoria's counterattack came the next day. I was teasing the parrot in its cage as my secretary, Mr. Davies, reported item by item. Miss Vance outbid us at a high price for the Clearwater Bay project. Miss Vance started rumors to drive down our stock price, then bought low. Miss Vance had the memorial lamp for the little young master extinguished. My fingers tightened. The parrot shrieked and fluttered to the far corner of the cage, not daring to come near me again. "What did you say?" I turned my head, my voice low and dangerous. Mr. Davies kept his head down, not daring to look at me. "Miss Vance put out the lamp. She's also having the temple demolished to build a villa for her wedding." The bulldozers are already on site crash. I kicked a nearby sandalwood chair, sending it tumbling across the room until it slammed into the wall. Mr. Davies spoke quickly. I'll send men to stop them immediately. I put a hand on his shoulder. No, I'll go. The limousine screeched to a halt. In the distance, the Grand Temple was already a ruin, shrouded in dust. Ethan, dressed in a sharp suit, was pointing around with an air of triumph. Here, tell the crew to level this part. Vicky, I want to turn this spot into a garden and plant your favorite yellow roses. Victoria clung to his arm, her head resting on his shoulder, smiling in agreement. What a perfectly sweet and harmonious scene, except the ruins before them were where Leo's memorial lamp was buried. I got out of the car first. Ethan was the first to see me. He puffed out his chest, a victor's smug smile on his face. The next second, his eyes widened in horror. What are you doing? Just as he spoke, the sound of a gunshot ripped through the air. I had shot out the tires of his and Victoria's car. Ethan's face went pale. He pulled Victoria back several steps. Sincere, are you insane? Victoria shrieked. My face was like stone as I raised the gun and pulled the trigger a second time. The bullet zipped past their feet, splattering mud on their expensive designer trousers. A dead silence fell over the site. No one dared to move, not even to breathe. I finally spoke. Get out. Victoria forced a smile. Sincere. All of you, get the hell out, I roared. It had been many years since I had been this angry. Everyone bowed their heads under the force of my fury. But Ethan suddenly took a step forward, lifting his chin at me arrogantly. Mr. Hawthorne, Vicky bought this land fair and square. What right do you have to stop us? Victoria sighed and added, Sincere, this is my business. It has nothing to do with you. I scoffed. You have nothing to do with me? What about Leo's memorial lamp? Ethan rolled his eyes. Are you still into that superstitious nonsense? Maybe you should get your head checked. Victoria stepped in front of him. She knew me. She was afraid I'd fire a third shot. Sincere, Leo is long gone. We've both started new lives. Why can't you just let go? Your obsession might be a burden to him. My pupils contracted. Victoria Vance, she stared at me, her smile full of condescending pity, with a hidden flicker of satisfaction. Yes, satisfaction. She said, Leo never even got to see this world. Whose fault was that? Your hands are stained with blood. This is karma. Ethan is different. There isn't a drop of blood on his hands. We had been together for so long that Victoria knew exactly how to hurt me. Leo's memorial lamp is buried on the mountainside not far from here. Are you going to show him how you get your hands bloody right in front of him? Or you could just leave peacefully. When Ethan and I get married, we'll even send you an invitation. Ethan chuckled in agreement. That's right. When Vicky and I have children, they'll grow up here. We can say it's for that unlucky kid's share, too. My arm felt heavy, trembling. I lowered the gun. Victoria Vance, the first thing I ever told you to learn was how to be ruthless and ungrateful. I thought you couldn't do it. I misjudged you. You learned very well. I dug Leo's memorial lamp out of the mountainside with my own hands. I found a new temple and had it lit again. As the flame flickered, I thought I could see Leo's faint, small figure. He was smiling sweetly at me, calling, Daddy. After a long time, I left, my black limousine driving off into the wind and snow. Victoria Vance, you played your hand well. The news of Victoria and Ethan's romance quickly spread throughout the city. They said the new mansion she was building was a masterpiece of luxury, designed by a top team with the most expensive materials. She lavished gifts on her fiancé, spending $30 million on a single emerald wedding ring. No one knew that she was almost my wife. 2 years ago, a bad business decision left her on the verge of bankruptcy. By then, I had already let her establish her own company and didn't interfere in her affairs. She came to me for help, dressed in the same kind of white dress she wore when we first met, looking pitiful and vulnerable. As it happened, my parents were pressuring me to get married, and I was tired of it. So I proposed a win-win partnership. I would inject the capital to save her company, and she would marry me and be a proper wife. She agreed immediately but requested that we keep the marriage a secret. Sincere, I hope that one day, when I stand by your side, everyone will say we're a perfect match. I knew she was lying. An ambitious woman like Victoria Vance couldn't tolerate anyone being above her. She couldn't stand being known only as Mrs. Hawthorne. It didn't matter. I didn't care if it was public or not. After that, we remained distant in public, but in private, we were like the most passionate lovers. Except Victoria kept finding excuses to postpone the wedding. And as she stalled, Ethan Miller appeared. Tisk. Fortunately, I had taken some precautions when I invested that capital. A few days later, I received an anonymous video. The content was simple, a couple being affectionate, playing with a small dog. The people were familiar, Victoria and Ethan. The dog was familiar too, a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. I had bought it last year off the street in Southeast Asia, just before it was about to be butchered. It was too weak to bite, but it still opened its mouth in a biting motion when I, a stranger, touched it. Victoria took one look at it and fell in love. She said she adored its spirit. I decided to be generous and gave it to her. Now this ferocious dog that wouldn't give me the time of day was lying in Ethan's lap, its tail wagging happily. It licked the back of Ethan's hand again and again, not a trace of its fierceness left. Ethan's eyes crinkled in a smile as he called its name. Leo. Good boy, good Leo. Are you only going to lick Daddy's hand? Go on, go lick Mommy's hand too. He stroked the dog's chin and gently tugged its tail. The terrier rolled onto its back, belly up, in a display of submission. Victoria laughed, her voice like tinkling bells as she playfully rubbed its belly. Oh, what a good boy. Leo's so obedient and smart. Give Mommy a kiss. Ethan's eyes darted around as he asked with pointed innocence, calling him Leo. That's Mr. Hawthorne's son's name, after all. Do you think he'll be angry? What does our family business have to do with him? Besides, what's there to be angry about? He's a person. Is he really going to argue with a dog? Hearing this, Ethan smiled even more broadly. His gaze shifted to the camera, as if speaking directly to me. That's right. How can a person argue with a dog? The video ended, my own ice-cold face reflected on the black screen. I picked up my phone and called Victoria. She answered after a few rings. Before she could speak, I demanded, You named a dog Leo? I thought I heard a faint chuckle on the other end, followed by Victoria's careless reply, A living, breathing puppy is 1,000,000 times better than your dead kid, isn't it? The line went dead. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. Just then, Mr. Davies came in to report. CEO Hawthorne, Miss Vance sent a wedding invitation. I opened the bright red invitation. Between the cartoon figures of a happy couple was a dog wagging its tail. Next to it was a single line, With thanks to my love and my child. Right, her puppy son. Of course he was her child. Mr. Davies's voice was tight. Sir, we can blow up that wedding villa right now. I patted his shoulder. Patience. We have a wedding to attend. The wedding was just a week away. Victoria had bought an entire private island and spared no expense in transforming it into a fantasy palace. The sheer extravagance of it all made national news. The media dubbed it the Queen's Wedding. Everyone knew that the capital's youngest self-made female billionaire was finally marrying for love. On a giant screen, a video played, telling the story of how she and Ethan met and fell in love. From love at first sight to a perfect match. It was truly a match made in heaven. The guests all wore smiles of blessing, some were even moved to tears. No one remembered that just 7 years ago, Victoria Vance was drowning in debt, forced to sell herself just to eat and have a roof over her head. She had nothing, not even hope. It was I who pulled her from the mire, taught her how to be a person, and helped her ascend. The host's voice boomed, pointing beyond the grand stage. Look, everyone, our bride and groom are about to make their entrance. Amidst thunderous applause, Victoria appeared, sitting in a small boat approaching from the sea, radiant in her wedding dress. She looked up shyly at the helicopter hovering above. The helicopter descended, and a ladder was lowered amidst a shower of flower petals and balloons. What is that? A scream erupted. Victoria's face went white as a sheet. That wasn't the groom on the ladder, it was a Staffordshire Bull Terrier dressed in a tattered, custom-made suit, its body dripping with blood. Its jaws were locked around its own hind leg, its body contorted into a stiff, unnatural ball. For a moment the only sounds were ragged breaths and the endless rush of the waves. Oh, and the video on the big screen, still playing the touching love story of the bride and groom. Over the background music, the sound of a spoon tapping a glass rang out 3 times. Clink, clink, clink. Miss Vance, you look absolutely stunning. I chuckled, setting down the long spoon I'd used to tap my wine glass. I addressed the woman, who stood frozen like a white statue. My dear bride, how did your groom die? Chapter 2. The guests shifted uneasily. Some tried to leave, only to find that the boats meant to ferry them back and forth were gone. I've kept a low profile these past few years. Surely you all haven't forgotten me, have you? I grabbed a bottle of champagne and smashed the top off. Foam erupted as I poured it messily into a flute. I raised the glass to the crowd, a smirk playing on my lips. Why does it seem like every single one of you has been trampling my name into the dirt? Instantly, fear washed over them. Cold sweat beaded on every forehead. Victoria finally regained her composure. She scanned the crowd and realized that the guests present were not the complete list she had invited. Everyone here was a turncoat who had secretly worked with her to chip away at my company over the years. The real power players, the ones who had refused to conspire with her, were nowhere to be seen. Sincere Hawthorne Victoria's eyes blazed with fury. What is this elaborate scheme? What are you trying to do? You've worked so hard these past few years. Isn't it only fair that I return the favor? I replied with a smile. Victoria shivered, but forced herself to ask loudly, You psycho, where did you hide Ethan? I swirled the champagne in my glass, drank the last drop and said leisurely, You're asking about your groom. Right. He's the man of the hour. Why would he leave? Why don't you look for him? Maybe he's playing hide and seek with you. I let go of the glass. It shattered on the ground. The video on the screen changed to a photo of Ethan. With every second that passed, a small piece of his image was digitally erased. It's your island. You know it well. An hour should be plenty of time, right? Look carefully. Otherwise, our groom might just disappear forever. Victoria's face was deathly pale, her lips completely drained of color. She was both terrified and enraged. Security, get everyone in here and clear this place out. A handful of bodyguards, fewer than 10, shuffled forward. Surrounded by my men, they were like shrimp before a shark. Victoria hadn't expected her own security to be so depleted. Her expression grew even darker. Miss Vance. I helped myself to the food, taking a bite of a small sweet cake. They say birds of a feather flock together. It's no wonder you fell for that dog at first sight. Ungrateful, arrogant, and utterly self-important. As I finished each word, Victoria swayed on her feet. She looked as if she was about to cry. Sincere, do you have to push me like this? Do you hate me that much? Hate born from love. I never thought you could be so irrational. Can't you just pursue me properly? These tactics will only push me further away. As she spoke, she straightened her posture, puffing out her chest. The guests began to whisper, their eyes glinting with gossip. I let out a sharp laugh, setting down my small spoon. I spoke, each word crystal clear. Pursue? Pursue whom? The you from 8 years ago who sold her body to pay off debts, who was sent to my bed afraid I wouldn't accept you? The you who flattered me endlessly for resources while secretly plotting my downfall. You think you're worthy? The crowd went silent for a moment, then erupted in hushed chatter. Victoria had always cultivated the image of a wealthy heiress, desperately hiding her past. Now that her persona was shattered, the guests looked at her with knowing, meaningful glances. She trembled uncontrollably, as if she'd been stripped naked for all to see. Sincere Hawthorne, I reminded her. 1 hour, Miss Vance. Time is ticking. You wanted to take a walk down memory lane, and I obliged. So have you found your groom, Mr. Miller, yet? Mr. Davies and my bodyguard stood by, calm and composed. It was obvious Victoria couldn't find him. The island wasn't large, but she didn't have enough people to search it inch by inch in the time allotted. I shrugged, magnanimously making it easier for her. I clapped my hands. The picture of Ethan, now almost completely erased, flickered. It changed to a live, distorted video of him. Vicky, where are you? Come quick. The camera pulled back to show his full body. He was tied up and suspended high in the air. Below him were crashing waves and sharp, jagged rocks. No, Victoria shrieked. Sincere, stop it. I held my hands out, my voice gentle. As you can see, I haven't done anything yet. But that might change. Victoria's lips trembled. You want to take your anger out on someone? Take it out on me, I thought for a moment, then smiled. All right. My gaze fell on a dinner fork. Without hesitation, Victoria picked it up and plunged it into the palm of her left hand. With a muffled grunt, she clutched her bleeding hand. Is that enough, Sincere? I sat down, feeling a bit bored, and said nothing. On the screen, Ethan's cries grew more desperate. Victoria gave a self-mocking laugh, then lifted her skirt and dropped to her knees before me. Is this enough, Mr. Hawthorne? A venomous hatred she couldn't hide gleamed in her eyes. I looked down at her, and after a long moment I spoke slowly. Victoria Vance, It's been a long time since you've knelt. She used to be so pliable. She had knelt when debt collectors came for her, and she had knelt when casino bosses cornered her. Later, the debt collector she'd paid back was ruined by one of her schemes and knelt before her, begging for his life, bashing his head on the floor until it bled. But he was still forced to jump off a building. Later still, the casino boss mysteriously disappeared, only to reappear as scattered remains found in the wilderness. Her moments of submission were just setups for her future revenge. But in front of me, she had never knelt, not even when she came begging for the capital to save her company. At the time, I admired her pride and was willing to preserve her dignity. I never deliberately humiliated her. Today, however, she knelt before me willingly, for another man. Suddenly, I lost my appetite. Even the most delicious desserts held no appeal. I spoke languidly. "Where do you think I put him?" "He's right here on this island." Victoria's eyes flew open. I continued mildly. "Ethan said he liked this island, so you bought it. Did you even bother to ask who the previous owner was?" "This place was an 18th birthday gift from my mother. I knew every blade of grass, every brick and tile. For a long time, this was my secret base, the place where I handled my underworld business. You didn't even check what was underground." I shook my head, disappointed by her carelessness and lack of foresight. "I hollowed out this entire island long ago. Underneath us is a dark playground." I raised my hand. The ground beneath our feet began to tremble, softly at first, then violently. Someone lost their footing and fell, not daring to make a sound. Before the astonished eyes of the crowd, the central wedding stage slowly collapsed, revealing a dark, gaping hole beneath. I stood up, my expression turning cold. This was the real me, sincere Hawthorne, the underworld overlord. "The playground is now open. Welcome, everyone." The black hole was actually a long, spiraling walkway leading deep underground. After rounding a corner, the view suddenly opened up. Everyone looked up and saw Ethan, hanging from an opening in the ceiling far above. His expensive wedding suit was in tatters, flapping pitifully in the sea breeze. Victoria screamed and ran towards him, yelling at her own bodyguards, "What are you standing there for? Go rescue him." But as they got closer, they realized it wouldn't be easy. Ethan was hanging too high. The interior walls were smooth, with no handholds for climbing. The vast underground playground was filled with equipment. Countless amusement park rides had been modified, giving them a menacing air. Dark, dried stains, likely blood, were visible on many of them. I walked over to Victoria and looked up, admiring the scene. "Look at that. His face is white with fear. Should I let him down?" Victoria whipped her head around, her eyes full of a hatred so intense I could almost hear her teeth grinding. Yes, I waved my hand. A chain mechanism activated, pulling Ethan in from the opening. Victoria cried out and lunged forward, but she could only slam against the railing of the high platform. She watched, helpless, as Ethan was dropped onto the central stage of the playground, where he lay motionless. Behind the stage, countless pairs of green eyes glowed in the dark, fixed on the piece of meat in the center. A few seconds later, Ethan scrambled to his feet, running around like a headless chicken. At the same time, the ceiling of the playground lit up. The entire surface was one giant screen, and it began to play the video Ethan had sent me. "Good boy, good Leo. Are you only going to lick Daddy's hand? Go on, go lick Mommy's hand too. Oh, what a good boy, Leo, so obedient and smart. Give Mommy a kiss." Calling him Leo, that's Mr. Hawthorne's son's name after all. Do you think he'll be angry? What does our family business have to do with him? Besides, what's there to be angry about? He's a person. Is he really going to argue with a dog? Everyone watched as this loving couple gave my dead child's name to a dog. I looked at Victoria's terrified expression and said softly, "How can a person argue with a dog?" "You're right. So everything that happens next is perfectly normal. Don't take it personally, Miss Vance." The video played on a loop, the couple's careless voices amplified throughout the playground, echoing and mixing with Ethan's present screams and the savage snarls of the beasts behind him. It was quite a show. The guests who had followed us down remained silent, but the looks they gave the bride and groom were strange. "Sincere, I'm begging you," Victoria knelt again, much more readily this time. She had a bad feeling. She gritted her teeth and began to kowtow, shouting, "It's my fault. I was wrong to use that name. Take all your anger out on me, please. Just let Ethan go." Ethan scrambled towards her, reaching through the railing to touch the hem of her dress. His gesture was infinitely tender, his voice tragic and full of love. "Vicky, you are the proudest queen, the noblest princess. Don't beg him. Meeting you is the best thing that ever happened to me. Stand up, Vicky. You are the one true love of my life." With that, he stood up straight, opened his arms towards the darkness behind the stage, and roared, "Come on, you bastards." Ethan Victoria's voice was a raw, desperate scream. "My dear couple, the iron gates aren't even open yet," I said idly, arms crossed. "Is this the climax already? What will you do for an encore?" Pfft. Mr. Davies covered his mouth, but a laugh escaped through his fingers. The guests, however, were not so polite. The air was suddenly filled with open amusement. Victoria froze, her carefully constructed, emotional performance deflated like a popped balloon. She had tried to stage a tragic romance, but she had become a clown. The show was over. I leaned down and whispered in her ear with a laugh, "I've changed my mind. I don't want either of your lives." Victoria's head snapped around to look at me. The video on the screen abruptly stopped. Ethan glared at me, panting. In that moment, only the sound of barking from behind the gates was clear. Victoria's body went limp. A familiar, slightly surprised, slightly shy smile appeared on her face. "Sincere, you still can't let me go, can you? I regret it too. Sincere, let's just get a new groom for this wedding." Her eyes lit up as if she'd had a brilliant idea. "Leo, we can have another Leo. We'll bring him back. What do you say?" I suddenly had to admire Victoria. She was the first woman to ever make me feel so nauseated. I managed to resist the urge to vomit on her face and snap my fingers. The big screen lit up again, but with a new video. Heaps of documents, blurred audio recordings, and hidden camera footage flashed across the screen. As each piece of evidence played, Victoria's face grew paler until it was as white as a corpse. Behind her, some of the guests collapsed to the floor, a dark patch spreading on the ground beneath them. I patted her on the shoulder. "I won't do anything. Fine. But what about you? Miss Vance, your rise to power was far from clean. Tax evasion, bribery, fraudulent contracts." Victoria looked like she was about to faint. "And to get that piece of land in the South District, you hired someone to cause a car accident. Tisk, tisk, 5 lives. Oh, and you started an import-export business at the beginning of this year, didn't you? Bought a cargo ship too. Did you really think you were the smartest person in the world?" At this, I felt a strange sense of relief. If it hadn't been for this business with Ethan, I never would have investigated Victoria so thoroughly. Her audacity was beyond belief. I kicked her to the ground, wishing she would just die right then and there. "I was your mentor, Victoria Vance. But I never imagined you bitch, would dare to become a spy." Victoria couldn't say a word. The other guests were trembling. Every crime shown on the screen implicated them in some way. "But a spy?" someone immediately shouted. "CEO Hawthorne, I knew nothing about Victoria being a spy. I just did a few small deals with her." Several others chimed in, proclaiming their innocence, and every gaze that fell on Victoria was now filled with hatred and blame. Where was the happy couple everyone had been celebrating just moments ago? Sincere Victoria scrambled forward on her hands and knees and grabbed my ankle, her face a mess of tears and snot, all traces of her pride gone. "Sincere, help me, save me. I was set up. I had no choice. I'm innocent too." I kicked her away again, my voice like ice. "Are you? How can you prove it?" I glanced at Ethan on the central stage, who was stunned into silence by this turn of events. A jolt went through Victoria. Without a moment's hesitation, she said, "I can prove it. I'll prove it right now." She smiled, a coaxing, fawning expression on her face, and said with absolute resolve, "Sincere, do whatever you want with Ethan. I'll do whatever you say, Victoria Vance." Ethan slammed against the railing, but his outstretched hand could no longer reach a single hair on her head. She now looked just as she had when I first met her, destitute, timid, and utterly servile. She groveled at my feet, wiping a tiny speck of dust from my shoe. "Sincere, I'll prove it any way you want. You call the shots. I fought tooth and nail to get where I am today. I won't go back down. I will climb even higher." She smiled up at me, her fingers clutching my trouser leg like it was the last lifeline in the world. I held my hands out towards Ethan. "Mr. Miller, it seems your one true love doesn't love you very much." Ethan looked at her as if he were seeing an alien wearing Victoria's skin. The facade of his tender, deep love shattered into a million pieces. "Victoria Vance, you bitch." He started cursing her, but then his tone softened and he reached out a hand. Vicky, even if you go to jail, I'll wait for you. I'll help you rebuild everything." His eyes shone with hope, as if he could see a future where they started over and overcame all obstacles. I couldn't help but applaud. Rebuild? Mr. Miller, how exactly do you plan to help her rebuild? You probably don't know this, but when she started her own company, every single one of her projects in the first year came from me. Miss Vance's golden reputation was forged with gold from my own vaults. How much gold do you have to give her? I was mocking Ethan for being naive, but Victoria seemed to hear it as a declaration of my lingering affection. She looked genuinely touched. "Sincere, I've been too willful these past few years. I'm sorry. We're still young, we can have another child soon. Yes, it will be a son. It will be Leo." Ethan couldn't accept it. "Victoria Vance," he cried in anguish. "This has nothing to do with you anymore." Victoria's face suddenly went cold as she snapped at him, her chin held high. Smack! I slapped her so hard 2 of her teeth flew out. "You think I would ever touch you again? Even if Leo were to be reborn, he would never choose a mother like you." The force of the blow sent Victoria stumbling back until she hit the railing. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, still trying to salvage the situation. "Sincere?" I scoffed. "Think carefully, Miss Vance. Even if I agreed to help you cover up this mess, what about everyone else? They're not blind and deaf." Victoria's face was a mask of pleading and hope. "Sincere, you can do it. None of these people are clean. Who would dare to disobey you?" Mr. Davies, who had been watching silently, chuckled and interjected, "Mr. Miller is clean at his words." Victoria froze as if turned to stone. After a long moment, she slowly turned her head to look at Ethan. Ethan instinctively pulled his hand back and took a step away. "Vicky?" Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. "Ethan, forgive me. Please help me. I have no choice. I really don't want to do this." As she murmured, drawing everyone's attention, she snatched the controller from Mr. Davies's breast pocket and threw open the iron gates behind the stage. "Victoria Vance." Ethan screamed and tried to run, but the stage was only so big. Where could he go? He could only watch in terror as the gates opened and the beasts stalked out one by one. Victoria spoke to him in a soft, gentle voice. "Darling, didn't you say I was the one true love of your life? Save me, and don't worry, no matter what happens to you, I promise I'll take care of you for the rest of your life." Ethan stared at Victoria, his face contorted in a mask of fury. With a primal roar, he summoned a burst of strength. He managed to squeeze half his shoulder through the gap in the railings, stretching out his arm. Caught off guard, Victoria was yanked violently forward. Ethan held on to her with one hand and tore off his wedding jacket with the other, using it to tie her to the railing. A dozen drugged wolfhounds closed in, their gaping mouths dripping with saliva, the stench of them thick in the air. Victoria screamed and tried to escape, but it was no use. She kicked Ethan hard. "You bastard, you want me to die?" Ethan slapped her back across the face and grabbed her long hair, laughing maniacally. "We'll die together." As the hounds got closer, I took a military combat knife from one of my bodyguards and tossed it to the edge of the railing. A long, thin chain was attached to the hilt. "My dear couple, I never said you had to die." A look of ecstatic relief washed over Ethan's face. He grabbed the knife and tried to throw the chain over the top of the railing. If he could secure it, he could use the chain to climb up and over, but Victoria was there. Tied to the railing, unable to escape, she snatched the other end of the dangling chain. "Untie me first," Ethan refused, his eyes bloodshot as they fought over the knife. In the struggle, Victoria kicked him squarely between the legs. Ethan screamed and let go, curling into a ball. Victoria, overjoyed, cut through her wedding dress, freeing her hands. Then, just before she ran, she hurled the knife with all her might at Ethan, who was about to be overwhelmed by the hounds. It struck him squarely in the chest. "Sincere, see?" I proved it. The joyful expression froze on her face. I stepped aside, revealing the police officers standing behind me. In the distance, the sound of sirens could be heard. Victoria finally understood. I had been playing her all along. Sincere Hawthorne, go to hell, go to the deepest level of hell. She was furious, but it was useless. She was still screaming curses as the police led her away. After the scene quieted down, I looked at the trembling guests with a faint smile. I simply raised an eyebrow, and these savvy opportunists scrambled to pledge their loyalty. I waved a dismissive hand. "Get out." 7 months later, Victoria Vance was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to death, with the execution to be carried out immediately. I didn't go to see her. I also refused her request for a final meeting. There was no point. As for Ethan, I showed some mercy that day and had him rushed to the hospital. But the dogs had bitten him in a very unfortunate place. He would spend the rest of his life as a eunuch. The trauma was too much for him. He developed a severe mental illness. Out of the goodness of my heart, I went to visit him once at the psychiatric hospital. He had just taken his medication and was lying limply on the bed. When he saw me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and venom. "You think you've won, Hawthorne? Ha ha ha, you don't know, do you? Victoria never loved you. She hated the way you looked down on her, the way you treated her like charity. So that kid, Leo, your son, you think his death was an accident? That bitch did it on purpose. She didn't want to have your child. She said the thought of it made her sick." I listened, but felt no ripple of emotion in my heart. Just then my phone rang. A sweet female voice came through. "CEO Hawthorne, I've invested so much in this. Can't you give me a little boost?" I chuckled softly. "A car will pick you up tonight." I hung up and raised an eyebrow at the seething Ethan. "Did you really think I'm afraid of being betrayed by an idiot?"